Mitchell Robinson is easily one of, if not the biggest bright spot of the New York Knicks. The Knicks have generally been pretty bad at drafting over these past few years, but they really hit it big when they managed to land Mitchell Robinson with the 36th pick in the draft. Since then, Mitch has been a complete steal as he's emerged as one of the top defensive bigs in the league at such an early age. Mitch is already an elite rim protector as he finished second in blocks per game his rookie year and tied fifth for blocks his second year. Mitch can not only defend the rim at a high level, but despite his height at 7'1", Mitch is agile enough where he can guard every position on the floor. He's got quick feet and fast recovery time. If he gets switched onto a guard, Mitch can very easily hold his own. A lot of times perimeter players think they can shoot over Mitch, only to end up getting their shot blocked. They don't realize Mitch can cover a lot of space in a very quick amount of time. Mitch is also really strong on the glass. 7 boards a game doesn't look that impressive, but he's only playing 23 minutes a night. Per 36 minutes, Mitch actually collects 11 rebounds a game. On offense, Mitch is also a beast because he's an excellent finisher in the paint, and he's great scoring as a roll man out the pick and roll. Because of his athleticism, size, and length, when he gets a scoring opportunity around the paint, he's scoring at an incredibly high rate. In fact, he broke Wilt Chamberlain's record for the highest field goal percentage in league history by shooting 73% this year. Despite Mitch's incredible production, there's a serious question whether Mitch may be on the Knicks long term. Now, this question may upset Knicks fans, but this is a reality that the Knicks have to embrace. The reason for this is because the time to pay Mitch is coming sooner than you may think. So far, Mitch has more than outplayed his contract. He made only $1.5 million this season, which is way less than his actual worth to the team. The Knicks will not have Mitch on a cheap contract for very long. Mitch only has one more cheap year on his contract next year at $1.6 million. Then the Knicks can either make him a restricted free agent in the summer of 2021, or they can opt in on his 4th-year team option for the 2021 to 2022 season, which would make him an unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2022. Typically, rookie contracts are structured so they don't become a restricted free agent until the 4th year, but because Mitchell Robinson was a 2nd-round pick, this is how his contract is structured. The Knicks, unfortunately, don't have the luxury of keeping Mitch on a cheap deal for 4 seasons before he hits restricted free agency. The Knicks also have the option of trying to extend Mitch Robinson this offseason, but Mitch could decline an extension to try to make more money in the 2021 offseason. In this video, we're going to weigh all of the Knicks' options for Mitchell Robinson and try to decide what the Knicks should do with him going forward. But before we continue, if you like videos like this, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. I love making content like this for you guys, and your support helps me to make more dope videos. Now let's continue. The first option that the Knicks will have with Mitch is to try to extend him this offseason. According to DailyKnicks.com, the most that the Knicks can offer Mitch in extension talks this offseason is a 4-year, $56 million extension. Signing him to this 4-year extension will decline his 4th-year option of $1.8 million, and his new extension will kick in starting in the 2021 to 2022 season. A 4-year, $56 million contract would pay Mitch a salary of about $14 million a year. Now, if Mitch agrees to this extension, Knicks fans should pop champagne because this is a great, team-friendly contract for the type of player that Mitch can develop into. Mitch will train with Kenny Payne, who's known as the big man whisperer. He's developed many big men at Kentucky who've gone on to become elite players. If Mitch becomes an all-defensive level center, then a $14 million annual salary for his services is a very good contract. The only downside to extending Mitch to a contract like this is that since the 4th-year team option is taken away, Mitchell Robinson's new contract will take away some of the cap space in what's supposed to be a star-studded 2021 offseason. Superstars like Giannis and Kawhi will be available that summer. So if you're the Knicks, you have to decide, is it better to maximize your cap room for that summer, or is it better to try to lock up Mitch now? If I was the Knicks, considering their futility in free agency over the past 2 decades, I would think that locking up Mitch, who looks like a legit building block, should be a higher priority. So the Knicks should do everything in their power to try to extend Mitch this offseason. The only issue here is that Mitch more than likely will reject that $56 million extension. The reason for this is because if Mitch waits until the 2021 offseason, he could be eligible for an even bigger contract where he can make up to 25% of the salary cap. The salary cap for that year is projected to be $125 million, so a deal like that would start at an annual salary of $25 million a year. This is where things start to get hairy for the Knicks, because if you're the New York Knicks, you have to really question if Mitch's upside is high enough where you're willing to give him a max contract starting at $25 million a year, especially in a league where the center position is becoming devalued. Centers used to be the centerpiece of a team's offense, but in today's league, your offense is run through a perimeter player, and the role of a center is primarily just defense, rim running, and rebounding. Smart teams only reserve max contracts for the top players in the league. Teams that hand max contracts out like candy get screwed in the long term. Centers like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic are good enough offensively where teams can run their offense through these guys, and that's why they're easily worth the max. Mitch does not project to be a great offensive center like these guys. I know Mitchell Robinson has uploaded videos of himself this offseason shooting three-pointers and dribbling like a guard, but I don't buy it. A lot of NBA players make videos like this in the offseason. It doesn't mean they can actually do this stuff in the regular season when the games actually matter. Hassan Whiteside uploaded a video of himself hitting three-pointers 2 years ago. Of course, this doesn't mean that he's a legitimate stretch five. Mitchell Robinson never looks to shoot unless he's in the paint, and he's a career 58% free throw shooter. Knicks fans shouldn't expect that they have the next Kevin Durant on their hands in Mitchell Robinson. If Mitchell Robinson can work with Kenny Payne and learn to get his fouls under control and possibly extend his range to the mid-range area, I think that version of Mitch is a fantastic player. But I don't think that's necessarily a player I would be willing to commit a $25 million a year max contract to. Then there's also the question of what would he get from another team if he becomes a restricted free agent in 2021. Is there an outside team that would try to outbid the Knicks for Mitchell Robinson by offering him a max deal? If last season is any indication, probably not. Porzingis and Nikola Vucevic both got max deals, but both of those guys are legit all-stars. Al Horford did get 4 years, $109 million, but his contract was viewed at the time and still is viewed now as a massive overpay. Brook Lopez, who is close to Mitch's archetype in that he's primarily used as a defensive center, except he can shoot the three-pointer, got 4 years, $52 million out of the Bucks. Valanciunas, who's become a really high-quality starting center, got 3 years, $45 million from the Grizzlies, which amounts to about $15 million a year. And Julius Randle, a player who averaged 21 and 8 last year, got 3 years, $62 million from the Knicks, which amounts to about $18 million a year. So even if Mitch improves, unless he becomes a player you can legitimately run offense through, he doesn't appear to be a center that teams will be throwing max money at. But as the Sixers show with Al Horford, teams at times do offer players ridiculous contracts that go way beyond what the player is worth. Ultimately, the market will decide what Mitch is worth next offseason. Now, would Mitch actually demand a $25 million a year max? Looking at his agent, Rich Paul, that's certainly a possibility. Rich Paul is known for making unreasonable contract demands for his clients. Rich Paul doesn't know the true value of his clients, which is why he usually demands way more than what his clients are truly worth. For example, in 2017, Nerlens Noel used to play for the Dallas Mavericks. That offseason, Noel was a restricted free agent. The Mavericks offered Noel a 4-year, $70 million deal, but Rich Paul told him to reject that deal because he believed he was worth a max contract, even though no other team in the league offered Noel that kind of money. Because Noel and the Mavericks were far apart on an extension deal, Noel ended up signing the qualifying offer. Noel bet on himself and totally fell off a cliff the next year and has been signing minimum contracts with teams since. As a result of Noel missing out on millions that he'll likely never see again, Rich Paul was fired. The last option that the Knicks have of Mitchell Robinson is to exercise his 4th-year team option, which would pay him $1.8 million in the 2021 to 2022 season. While this would put Mitch on a cheap deal for 2 more years, the downside of this is it would make him an unrestricted free agent in the 2022 offseason, where he's free to go wherever he wants. The Knicks can't afford to just let Mitch walk for nothing, so to me, this option should be off the table. So what should the Knicks do with Mitch? If I was the front office, first and foremost, I would offer him the 4-year $56 million extension. If Mitch agrees to this, that's a huge win for the organization, but more than likely he rejects this deal, so the Knicks have to be prepared for the possibility that this happens. Now, if Mitch rejects the deal, I'm opting out of his 4th-year team deal, and I'll let him become a restricted free agent in 2021. During that offseason, I will look to re-sign Mitch to a reasonable contract. Even if he does make the strides we hoped him to make in terms of managing his fouls and increasing his range, I don't think he's worth over $25 million a year. I think a player of Mitch's archetype would be worth the contract Clint Capella got 2 years ago. Back in 2018, the Rockets and Clint Capella agreed to a 5-year, $90 million contract, which pays him $18 million a year annually. Considering that Mitch is a very similar player to Clint Capella in play style, I think a contract like this would be a great deal for Mitch. If Mitch takes the next step forward, $18 million a year is pretty fair. If Mitch and Rich Paul don't agree to this deal because they want $25 million a year, tell him to see if another team is willing to pay him that. If no other team is offering Mitch a max, then this gives the Knicks leverage in getting a more reasonable deal done. Of course, there is a risk that a team will throw a max offer at Mitch, and then the Knicks will be left with the option of either letting Mitch walk or bringing him back on a totally unreasonable contract, neither which is desirable. The Knicks also have the option of trying to trade Mitch if they think he was more than his actual worth. The only issue with this is that the Knicks would not be guaranteed to get back a really good return in a deal, and Mitch is the closest thing the Knicks have to a legit foundational piece. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm trying to extend Mitch now, and if that doesn't work out, I'm just going to bank on trying to bring Mitch back on a reasonable contract next offseason. And with that said, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. How much can Mitch reasonably improve going into next season? What numbers do you think would make a fair deal for Mitchell Robinson next offseason? And would he truly be worth a $25 million a year max? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your day.